Welcome to the Reds Trends, your ultimate home for everything Liverpool FC. Stay ahead of the game with the latest breaking transfer news, tactical analysis, match reactions and daily updates straight from Anfield. Whether it's Premier League title battles or Champions League nights, we bring you all the action and insights you need as a true fan. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a beat. Up the Reds. YNWA Liverpool set to sign Ibrahima Embay. The Anfield transfer bombshell. Important. This is a dramatic, fictionalised transfer story script based on the scenario you provided, not a confirmed transfer announcement. The summer transfer window has entered its most dangerous phase, and just when Liverpool supporters thought they had seen every possible twist, a stunning name has suddenly emerged at the centre of the transfer storm. Ibrahima Embay, the young Paris Saint-Germain talent, has reportedly become a player of enormous interest to Liverpool. And the possibility of seeing him walk through the doors at Anfield has sent the transfer world into overdrive. For Liverpool, this would not simply be another signing. It would be a statement about ambition, a statement about the future, and perhaps most importantly, a statement that the club is prepared to move aggressively for the next generation of footballing talent. For weeks, Liverpool's recruitment department has been working behind the scenes, studying the market and identifying players who could become important pieces of the club's future. While supporters have been watching the biggest names dominate headlines, another operation may have been developing quietly away from the spotlight. And now Mbaye's name has suddenly exploded onto the Liverpool transfer radar. The idea of the PSG youngster exchanging Paris for Merseyside is already creating huge excitement. Liverpool know exactly what kind of player they would be targeting. Mbaye represents youth, potential, technical ability and the possibility of becoming a major player at the highest level. That combination is precisely what makes this story so fascinating. Imagine the scene. Anfield, the famous red shirt, the cop roaring, and a young Mbaye stepping onto the pitch for the first time as a Liverpool player. It is the kind of image that could become the beginning of an entirely new chapter. But before that dream can become reality, Liverpool would have to overcome PSG. And that is where the story becomes truly dramatic. Paris Saint-Germain are not a club that simply allows highly rated young players to walk away without a fight. The French giants understand the value of developing elite talent, and if Liverpool genuinely decide to push for Mbaye, negotiations could become extremely complicated. Liverpool would therefore have to convince PSG that a deal makes sense for everyone. And there is another factor, Mbaye's own ambitions. Every young footballer eventually reaches a point where a decision must be made. Stay where you are and continue fighting for opportunities, or take the risk of joining a club where the pathway to first-team football could look completely different. For Mbaye, Liverpool could represent an extraordinary opportunity. Anfield is not simply a stadium. It is a footballing institution. It is a place where young players can become stars. It is a place where pressure is enormous, but so is the reward. And Liverpool's interest would immediately raise one enormous question. Could Mbaye become the next young player to explode onto the world stage wearing the famous red shirt? That is exactly what makes this potential move so exciting. Liverpool have always understood that elite squads cannot be built only around established superstars. The greatest teams require planning. They require succession. They require young players capable of growing into enormous responsibilities. And that is where Mbaye could fit into the bigger picture. Liverpool would not necessarily be signing him simply for what he can do today. They would be signing him because of what he could become tomorrow. That distinction is crucial. The biggest clubs in Europe are constantly searching for the next breakthrough player before the rest of the football world fully recognises his potential. If Liverpool believe Mbaye possesses that potential, then waiting could be dangerous, because once several major European clubs become interested, the competition can change everything. One phone call becomes two clubs become five. A quiet negotiation becomes a bidding war. And suddenly, a player who was barely mentioned a few weeks earlier becomes one of the most discussed young talents in Europe. Liverpool, therefore, cannot afford to move slowly if they genuinely want Mbaye. The message from Anfield would be clear. If the opportunity is there, attack it. And that could be exactly what makes this transfer story so explosive. Liverpool supporters have become accustomed to seeing their club operate carefully in the transfer market, but there are moments when a club has to recognise that certain opportunities cannot be ignored. Mbaye could be one of those opportunities. The player is young, the potential is enormous, and the possibility of developing him within Liverpool's environment could be extremely attractive. Inside the club, the recruitment team would need to examine everything: his technical profile, his physical development, his mentality, his ability to handle pressure, his tactical intelligence, his versatility, and perhaps most importantly, his hunger to become better. Because Liverpool cannot simply sign a talented player, they need players capable of surviving the intensity of playing for one of the biggest clubs in world football. At Liverpool, potential is not enough. Eventually, potential must become performance. The pressure at Anfield is relentless. One poor performance can create questions. One brilliant performance can create headlines. One decisive goal can transform a young player's reputation overnight. That is why a move to Liverpool would represent a huge challenge for Mbaye. But it could also represent the biggest opportunity of his young career. Imagine arriving in England and suddenly finding yourself surrounded by experienced international players. Imagine training every day at elite intensity. Imagine hearing thousands of supporters singing your name. Imagine being told by the coaching staff that they believe you can become an important player for Liverpool. For a young footballer, that can be transformational, and Liverpool may believe Mbaye has the mentality required to embrace exactly that challenge. The transfer window, however, has one cruel rule. Nothing is guaranteed until the paperwork is completed. This is where supporters need to remain patient. Interest is not an agreement. An agreement is not a medical. A medical is not a completed transfer. And a completed transfer is not official until the club announces it. That means every stage of this potential deal could produce another twist. Liverpool could make an approach. PSG could respond. The players' representatives could become involved. Negotiations could accelerate. Then suddenly everything could slow down. This is the nature of modern football transfers. 1 minute everything appears close. The next minute another club enters the race. And that is why the Mbaye story could become one of the most fascinating transfer sagas of the window. There is also the question of Liverpool's long-term project. The club cannot think only about the next few months. They have to think about the next 3 years, the next 5 years, the next generation. Signing young talent is therefore part of a much larger strategy. Liverpool want players who can develop within the club's culture rather than simply arriving as finished products. Mbaye in this fictional transfer scenario could represent exactly that philosophy. He would arrive with something to prove. He would arrive hungry. He would arrive with the ambition to show that he belongs at the highest level. And that hunger could become one of his greatest weapons, because Liverpool supporters love players who fight. They love players who run. They love players who refuse to give up. They love players who understand what the badge means. If Mbaye can demonstrate those qualities, Anfield could quickly become a place where he feels at home. But there is still PSG, and PSG will not simply disappear from this story. The French club would have every reason to protect its interests. If Liverpool come calling, PSG could demand strong financial conditions. They could insist on a buyback clause. They could request bonuses. They could demand a sell-on percentage. They could even attempt to convince Mbaye that his future should remain in Paris. Every negotiation has multiple layers, and the closer the transfer window gets to its final hours, the more dramatic those negotiations become. Picture the final week. Liverpool officials are working late, phone calls are being exchanged, agents are travelling, documents are being prepared. The players' camp is evaluating every possibility. Supporters are refreshing social media every few minutes. Then comes the message everyone has been waiting for. Liverpool have intensified talks. Suddenly, the story changes. The possibility becomes a serious possibility. And then another message appears. Liverpool are pushing to reach an agreement. The excitement grows. The pressure increases. PSG now have a decision. Keep the player or accept Liverpool's proposal. And somewhere in the middle of all this is Mbaye himself. A young footballer standing at the centre of a transfer battle between two giants. Paris or Liverpool, France or England would imagine.